On the Edge 105.1, 105.3 FM. It's now time for the legal landscape. And today we have the topic, Mask Me If You're Bad. Well, since the introduction of the disaster risk management orders, many places of business have continued to maintain their mask mandates for visitors and for staff. Is this legal? Didn't Brogad free up the place? Well, how can Jamaicans know what is in the country after DRMA? Well, we have with us the managing partner of DunnCox Attorneys, and he's here with us, Mr. Emile Leiba. Good afternoon, sir.
Hi, good afternoon.
I had to smile when I read the intro today. You know, it's such a serious time that we're living in, sir, that we use this form of humor to take us through. Mask Me If You're Bad. That's the title for today. But with the end of the DRMA, as we welcome you to our show for our listeners as well, too. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Can my employer, sir, continue to mandate that I wear a mask?
The simple answer is yes. It has to be justified on the basis of health and safety. But an employer can put in place safety protocols for their employees, even if there's no law in place requiring them to do so, because they actually have a duty under the law to protect their employees and create a safe work environment.
Okay. But can a business continue to mandate that I wear a mask in order to enter their building?
Well, that now is a different area of law that has to do with the person being the occupier of the building. So, one way to look at it, it's like your house. You can say who can come into your house and under what circumstances. So even though people have, the general rights within the law to do what they wish to do, if somebody's coming to my house and they're a nudist, for example, I can say, well, you would need to be clothed in order to enter my home. Similarly, for those who occupy and control buildings, public places, they can say, in order to come into my space, which I have control over, whether through ownership or leasing, these are the rules that I set for you to enter my place.
Emile, all right, you've given us very clear what the law states, but what should I do if everyone else is wearing a mask and I am not?
Well, that is almost a daily situation, that I have seen, and I've been on both sides of that question. And the question, I think the answer is really, does that place mandate mask wearing? Or, as it seems to be the case many times now, people are voluntarily wearing masks. So you have some places which have left up there, you must have a mask to enter signs, and some places have not. But yet you still see a number of individuals in the establishment wearing masks. So I think the best approach is to make an inquiry of the usual doorman who sprays their hands with unknown liquids, whether or not this is a building or space that still requires you to wear a mask.
Can an employer tell me what to wear to work and keep taking my temperature?
Well, an employer, some employers would think, you shouldn't limit the creativity, particularly of the ladies, who tend to have the much more fashion-forward outfits and places, and ways in which to dress. Although men are coming up more and more in the fashionable attire area. A lot of that depends, it goes back to that duty but separate from the duty of safety, the whole image of the workplace and so on is what is relevant, and the nature of the business. So a law firm may say, well, you need to come suited, but a factory might say, you have to wear your safety boots and your jeans. So it is, a school might have a different set of rules. So generally speaking, an employer can have uniform requirements or can have dress codes in place. In a food establishment, well, they are required to have hair nets and so on as part of their licensing. And so the employer can tell you what to wear. In terms of how you wear your hair, which I know is very topical when it comes to schools and students, I would say perhaps less so. This question of what is in keeping with the organization and the image of the organization, it remains an open question. But I would say in terms of general attire, they can. Now, in regards to the temperature checks, that would again fall under, is it required for health and safety? I personally would say no, because if one looks at the current COVID cases, many are asymptomatic. Many don't necessarily have the traditional symptoms, and it remains an open question as to whether temperature checks and to what extent they have ever, throughout this COVID period, actually caught, someone with COVID and prevented them from entering a building or a public space, or is it something that just makes us feel better that we're actually trying to do something? But this is one of those areas where, science or medicine and the law have to interact. But the whole question of temperature checks, both from the visitors to the premises standpoint and from an employee standpoint, I think they would have to, after the DRMA, which mandated it, be some basis. So before you could simply say, well, this is the law, and I must comply with the law, as everybody in Jamaica must, or should. But once it is no longer legally required, then the question is, well, what's my own kind of justification for this step?
But let's look at it, because we sometimes operate by numbers. What can employers do if COVID numbers flare up again and the government takes no steps to issue new orders?
Well, in that context, one would hope that the employers already have in place ready and clearly written pandemic policies. So some might have limited their policies to COVID policies or specific aspects, because you might have COVID-20, COVID-22, God forbid. But really, an employer should have in place a policy that can apply to any type of similar situation, including a flare-up of COVID-19, in which case you can what I call reactivate. So let us say, like the government, you have relaxed your protocols, mask wearing within the building and that type of thing. Once you have in place a policy, a written policy that's already been disseminated and so on, you can simply say to the employees, we refer to the policy, that you already received. We are reactivating our pandemic protocols, and you will therefore have to, comply with whatever it says. And so hopefully, hopefully, not unlikely, but in the adverse occasion that things flare up again, we would say that, okay, we know what this is, we have dealt with it before, we have everything in place, let's just simply, kind of go back to the formula.
I mean, I love how you just make the law just seem so easy
It can be
through.
easy and it can be hard, it's just a matter of perspective.
Yeah, I was going to say the view on our legal landscape today, it's like we feel as if we have a crisis, but then when we go to the experts and we hear it laid out, it really is a matter of knowing who to go to ask the right questions to say, this is what I need to know. And I want to...
You're virtually a lawyer yourself, and that's literally one of the most important questions somebody can ask themselves. Who should I go to ask this question?
Wow. Well, can I jump in and with let me call it a bonus question then?
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the hair and students a while ago. Let's look at it in the workplace. Can an employer tell me what hairstyle I should wear? Isn't that a breach of my rights?
Well, that hairstyle question has been looked at by the courts in the question of the Constitution. It's been looked at in the question of freedom of religion. It's been looked at in the question of freedom of expression and so on. Now, I will take the easy part first. If you are a Rastafarian by religion, an employer by law cannot discriminate against you by virtue of your religious beliefs. They can't call in a policewoman to shave your locks. And you are entitled to express your religion. Mm-hmm. Now, that is still a little nuanced, though, because, again, if you're in the food service industry, I think that there may be some technical difficulties regarding hairnets and things like that. Mm-hmm. But in the general space, once it is that you are practicing your religion and your hairstyle is reflective mm-hmm. of your religion, as an adult person, no one should be able to prevent you from doing so. Whether or not you can dye your hair purple, green, with a touch of yellow, I don't know, some blue, and then come into work with that hairstyle. If you're in marketing, I think it would be a great marketing tool. You will immediately catch everyone's eye and the mm-hmm. eyes of your clients. However, if you are in a space where it is, I would say, in express contradiction to the image of the organization, then there may be a discussion. Most mm-hmm. of these things really are best resolved by discussion. But in order to have an enforceable system, there has to be an actual written dress code or policy. So there's no inherent legal right on mm-hmm. the part of an employer to say under section so-and-so of the act, I can tell you what hairstyle to wear. Mm-hmm. So there's actually no inherent legal right to do so. And so, again, that's why from the employer's perspective, there would need to be a policy in place. And from the employee's perspective, you should familiarize yourself with the written policies and the dress codes and to see whether or not what you intend to do when you go and get things done is in keeping with that policy. And I think that you'll both be better off if you operate in that way.
Well, I guess that's why they always make sure you have to sign to say, I've read this and read that, eh? Mm-hmm. Thank you so very much for joining us today. It's always a pleasure on the legal landscape to hear the perspectives and how you correct us and make sure we are understanding what the legal landscape is in Jamaica. Emile Leiba is the managing partner of DunnCox Attorneys-at-Law with our legal landscape today. I love the title, Mask Me If You're Bad. Thank you, sir.
All right, no problem. My pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Okay, have a good evening.
Thank you. Oh, Mask Me. Edge 105.1, 105.3 FM. And I think we spent a little bit of extra time with that today because it is so topical now with the numbers that we have of the cases. We have to watch the cases that we have and realize how we want to react. Wear your mask or not. But look at those numbers because that really does affect how companies will be enforcing the masking laws, don't you think? Edge 105.1, 105.3 FM.